We are live now, please.
So we can begin.
Please.
Good morning to everybody. We welcome you to this mega international webinar on human resilience in times of crisis. We are happy to have all of you with us this morning, joining us. We will begin today's program with a prayer invoking the blessings of God. And I would request Dr. J. Andrew to kindly lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life, for the gift of ability to think, choose, and act, and also for the gift of education. We thank you for this day and for helping us to gather virtually, even in the midst of a pandemic. Lord, as the whole world fights COVID-19, we pray that in your mercy and kindness, help us to overcome this pandemic. Lord, we thank you for the resilience that you have granted to mankind. Help us to come out of this crisis wiser, kinder, and as better human beings and community. Lord, we pray that you lead us and guide us as we deliberate on human resilience in times of crisis. We pray for your blessings upon this program. Bless every member of St. John's College family, the principal, very especially the leaders of this program and all participants. Thank you, Lord, for you have heard our prayers and answered. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, Dr. J. Andrew, and we pray that God will be with us throughout this day and the next 2 days and for always. I would now request our head of the Department of English and convener of this webinar conference, Dr. Oswald Simon, to kindly introduce the conference to us.
Thank you, Dr. Melva Pope. I take this opportunity, a privileged one, to extend a hearty welcome to all very eminent and esteemed guests and speakers to this e-conference. I welcome all of you on behalf of St. John's College, on behalf of the principal, on behalf of the Department of English, on behalf of the Psychology Department, and on behalf of all the staff members of St. John's College to this e-conference, the topic being so relevant to each one of us all over the globe today. Human resilience in times of crisis is the issue in discussion today. And we are going to contemplate, we are going to debate, we are going to extend and present our views upon this very important topic when this COVID-19 is ravishing each and every country, impacting the lives of each and every single individual throughout the world. Resilience, very important word, resilience in this e-conference, is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. We know we will recover and we will rise like the phoenix, which rose from the ashes, goes back into ashes, and yet again another phoenix rises from the ashes. So the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, this elasticity, this pliability, this flexibility is what we can term as resilience. Everyone at some juncture of life will expect and go through and experience twists and turns. Some dangerous, some decapitating. But there will be traumatic events with lasting impacts, like the death of a loved one, a life-altering accident, or a serious illness, or the present global crisis due to the spread of coronavirus. Now, ladies and gentlemen, each change impacts people differently, bringing a unique flood of thoughts, strong emotions, uncertainty, and yet a strong resolve to spring up, to rise from this situation which we are all together in. We remember the resilience of Napoleon Bonaparte when he returned from Elba. His resilience at that time, when he was down, he was losing, yet the resilience in him gave him the courage to rise up. We also must not forget the resilience of the freedom fighters. The freedom fighters were fighting against all odds. They had every reason to be dejected, to sit back home and let others do. Complacency would creep in, but no. The resilience in them enabled them to keep the fire of this freedom struggle ignited, and eventually we got freedom. Now, psychological resilience. We also have psychology department in this e-conference. Psychological resilience is the ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis or to return to the pre-crisis status quickly. And psychologists define resilience as a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, in the face of odds, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace problems, financial stressors, so on and so forth. Yet, every time if we look through the annals of history, we see resilience consistently at work, and it is this resilience that keeps us going on and on and on, never accepting defeat. But yes, suffering setbacks, they are there, but not accepting abject defeat and surrendering to the problem. Therefore, resilience plays a major role, and right now is the exact time, the right time for us to be resilient, to wait, to watch, not to be cowed down by the COVID-19 virus across the globe. We have to spring back. Efforts are being made all over the globe amidst opposition, amidst threats, but yet the spirit of resilience is there. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very warm welcome to you all. Good morning. And I can see very esteemed guests and speakers with us today. And with that, I would like to hand over the proceedings for further meditation to Dr. Shayanti Pratap Singh, Principal, St. John's College. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It was in the month of March, and we had all the depressing news coming to us from different parts of the country and the world. And then we got a video of Ratan Tata, in which he talked about the incessant ability of human beings to bounce back. And we thought, why not we organize an event in which we can have scholarly perspectives on resilience, where we be able to trace resilience through the historical narratives, through popular narratives, through visual cultures, and also have the psychological, ethical, and scientific perspectives on resilience and on the process of nurturing resilience. And thus was this conference born. Our Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashok Mittal, gave his wholehearted support to the idea. And we are very grateful to the very distinguished scholars, experts, scientists who have condescended, agreed to gather here to make these deliberations enriching, fruitful, and meaningful, and a small contribution in the heroic global battle against COVID 2019. Before we get to speak, some of the great speakers in this inaugural session, it would be my pleasure and privilege to introduce two eminent speakers who would be addressing us in this session. I take this opportunity to welcome the chief guest, Professor Ashok Mitaljee, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra. Professor Ashok Mittal did his master's in economics and later on PhD in economics. He had a long teaching career. He worked as a professor for 21 years and prior to that as lecturer and reader. 16 students have been awarded PhD degree under his supervision. Many have been awarded MPhil degree. He worked as chairman in the Department of Economics in Aligarh Muslim University. He has published books entitled Economics of the Cinema Industry in India and Capital Influence in India. Published number of papers, has been part of various administrative positions. He has been a life member of various academic bodies, chaired a number of sessions, was often invited as keynote speakers to very illustrious conferences, has led number of projects, and has been a visiting fellow at Institute of Social and Economic Challenge in Bangalore. He also worked as visiting professor at National Law Institute University, Bhopal, and has worked with eminent economists of the country. It is indeed our pleasure to welcome you, sir. Let me see, ever since he has taken over the university, we find a father figure at the helm of affair, one who is deeply interested in his students, one who is interested in nurturing the faculty members, one who is interested in enriching the lives through setting systems in place and by personally, individually motivating us. He is not a leader who speaks from a distance, but loves to walk along with those whom he leads. It's indeed our pleasure that you have taken time off your busy schedule. We welcome you, sir. It is also my pleasure and privilege to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Prakash Mishraji. I had the fortune of listening to him a couple of times, and I was just enamored by the way he brings points home. And of course, it is very difficult to read the number of awards he has got and the distinctions he holds because there are too many. But I'll just try to introduce the person who he is. I'll just try to read a very few details about him. He was conferred with prestigious B.C. Roy National Award for the year 2016 in the category to recognize the merit of eminent medical teacher ceremonially by the Honorable President of India. He was conferred with DSc Honora Causa by 5 Indian Health Sciences University, 1 DMSc Honoris Causa by Indian Health Sciences University in the recognition of selfless services rendered to the cause of medical education at national and international level. He is the principal advisor to the Honorable Chancellor and Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences, Karad. Presently, he also serves as Pro-Chancellor, Datta Meghe Institute of Medical Sciences, which is a deemed university in Nagpur. He is also the national head of academic program of Indian Program UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, APIA. He is member of the International Committee for Bioethics for the entire Asia Pacific region. He is advisor of Human Ethics Committee Association at Bangalore. He is the Dean of Academic and Accreditation Board, National Indian Medical Association, New Delhi. He is the director and professor in advanced physiology. He is professor of eminence, excellence, and emeritus with 5 health sciences university of the country. He is honorary IMA professor uh, and based at of IMA, which is based at New Delhi. Uh, is the honorary director Center for Health Policy Planning and Education Research of Datta Meghe Institute of Medical Sciences, which is again a deemed university. And he is chairman of National Medical Education Board of IMA. He is the member National Advisory Council of Indian Medical Association. He is the academic head and convener Academic Council of SARC Medical Association. And the list goes on of the present positions which he is holding. I've not been able to cover even half of them. And I would request you to Google it out and see the multifaceted his engagement in the area of medical education and research and administration. So without holding you any further, it is our privilege and opportunity to invite Dr. Prakash Mishraji to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you very much. Learned Vice Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Honorable Dr. Ashok Mitaljee, respected Dr. S.P. Singh, Principal of the illustrious College at Agra, organizers of this very notable conference on the virtual mode, all learned scholars who are participating, and resource faculties who will be dispensing that erudite dispensations in this conference. At the outset, I would like to record my sense of thanks and gratitude to Dr. S.P. Singh, organizers of this conference, the Department of English and Department of Psychology, for having given me this opportunity of talking to this illustrious learned gathering. Not because the gathering is illustrious, but the theme which has been picked up and the context in which it has been picked up is simply amazing. Let me accept very candidly, there could not have been a better time and a better occasion for picking this theme up for its discussion so as to bring out its various faces, facets, and manifestations. Recording my salutations and thanking all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, in the opening remarks, Dr. Oswald Simon has very categorically brought out as to what resilience is all about, be it in the generic sense, colloquial sense, literal sense, or even in the psychological sense. In the context of COVID-19, which has emerged as a huge human crisis, which is pervading the entire globe, and therefore the uncertainties which stand created as of now, they are mind-boggling and they are really baffling in all senses. But then, where exactly resilience operates? Ladies and gentlemen, human civilization has not that it has emerged without facing crisis or difficulties. If you look into the history, this is not the first crisis of its time. Annals of history bring us and remind us that n number of crises have been tided down. They have been overcome. They have been won over. And human civilization has come to stay with greater vigor, greater vitality, greater visibility, and greater wisdom. Speaking for the context of epidemics itself, I'm just putting across 4 important years. I'm not taking you to the medieval history. 1720, the world was absolutely dominated by the epidemic plague, the epidemic of plague. 1820, it turned out to be another epidemic in the name of cholera. 1920, it was Spanish flu. And 2020, it is COVID-19. I'm just bringing out these four important landmarks to bring out what resilience is all about. If 1720 epidemic was all the end of the world, the human civilization would not have resurrected itself for another century to be facing boldly 1820 epidemic. As if 1820 epidemic was not the last nail. 100 years of sustenance and resilience readied itself to face with greater vigor and vitality 1920 Spanish flu. And then the century to which you and me all belong, again, we are at the hallmark where we are taking up the cuddles of facing COVID-19. Therefore, I am wanting to bring out the evidences which human history itself is full of. There has been never a point in human history where men and mankind stood baffled, where they conceded, where as if it was taken that this was the last straw, where it was taken with a sense of pessimism that this is the end of the world, where it was construed that nothing is possible and feasible in terms of a new ray of light working out in the form of a new dawn. Human history bears a testimony that it has been pervaded by resilience, which is the skillfully capacity to navigate any and every crisis and not just settle with the crisis, but bounce back to normalcy with greater vigor, greater vitality, greater efficacy, greater effectivity, and permit me to say, greater perception to face many more. This is exactly what human resilience is all about. I'm just putting two important parables in order to make the correlation between what human resilience does. There cannot be a life, individual, social, or collective, which will not be subjected to setbacks. They could be of n number of types. In personal life, there are setbacks. In professional life, there are setbacks. Social life, there are setbacks. Collective life, there are setbacks. National life, there are setbacks. Global life, that are setbacks. Setbacks are a matter of routinity. But then, a setback to be converted into a comeback. This is a simple equation. Setback can be converted into a comeback only through a gateway, which is called as human resilience, mental resilience, emotional resilience, psychological resilience, physical resilience, intellectual resilience, social resilience, and permit me to say so, human resilience as a whole. It is this conversion, ladies and gentlemen, which according to me is the greatest hallmark which we all of us have to harbor in mind. It is true that we are all used to a setup of life. And that life basically contemplates two important aspects. We are happy when we are in a position to go in for certainty in which we are required to be operating. And this certainty gives us blesses in another manifestation in the form of a sense of predictability. Therefore, there are two cardinal parameters with which we are all plagued of. We want to live in certain situations, settled situations, and permit me to say so, predictable situations. The real crisis comes when this predictability falls short and certainty gets converted into uncertainty. Therefore, what is resilience all about? To my humble understanding, ladies and gentlemen, I am neither an expert in English nor I am an expert in psychology. But as a human being, what I have been able to understand for self, that I am wanting to put across. When I say resilience contemplates that it is the uncertainty which is the real face and facet of certainty. Capacity to handle the uncertainty, capacity to handle the unpredictable, that capacity which is in a position to generate that sense of positivity, pragmatism, vitality, vigor, enthusiasm, positive frame of mind. All these manifestations, when put together, they can be collectively rubricated into the form of what is called as human resilience. Uncertainty in any given situation, with any form, with any face, ladies and gentlemen, it is bound to generate three important aspects which we need to harbor in mind. It is bound to generate anger. That is the first connotation. It is bound to generate anxiety. That is the second connotation. It is bound to generate sadness. That is the third dimension. The trinity of uncertainty as a matter of consequential result is anger, is sadness, and is anxiety. It is natural Degrees may vary, but ultimately the manifestations can be clearly categorized into these three. But then, what exactly is the mode that human mind resorts to or human approach is expected to work up? Three dimensions. A, it is not possible for us to negate the uncertainty in the first go. Therefore, negation cannot be the approach. If we negate, perhaps it will be amounting to living in the fool's paradise. But then there are other two approaches. B, you are in a position to negotiate with the uncertainty. That is the mid-level approach. But real resilience-dominated approach is, it is neither negation nor negotiation, but it is navigating through those particular difficult, turbulent waters. That exactly is the onus which human resilience is required to be generating and resulting into. As a medical professional, as a medical student of medical science, I can very categorically work out as to what are the physiological dimensions of human resilience. Whenever there is a crisis, immediately the reaction of the body, which is generated out of all our adrenergic responses, there are only three modes. The first mode is first F, fight. Second mode is second F, fright. And the third mode is third F, flight. Now, this is exactly what I'm wanting to put across. Anything which is resulting in the form of a crisis, in the domain of uncertainty, which is causing anger, which is causing sadness, which is causing anxiety, there are three modes which are available to us. Either we just shiver, getting frightened, or we run away from the reality, flight. But there is a third dimension which is most important, and that is exactly the dominant manifestation of human resilience, and that is to fight. And it is not just to fight, it is fight head on. It is not just to fight head on, it is fight to finish. It is not only fight to finish, it is fight to be victorious. It is not only fight to be victorious, it is fight to be emphatically victorious, so that posterity is also able to derive inklings out of it. And the imprints of the same stand out on the sands of time, which emerge as not only benchmarks, but milestones. That is what human resilience, to my understanding, is. I'm very easily able to correlate it with the behavioral dispensations which the crisis generates. Is any hostile situation, any unpalatable situation, any situation which is going to be uncomfortable. What are the approaches which are available? There are only three approaches which are available. A, we have to adapt to the situation. B, we have to work out adaptations to the adopted situation. And C, we have to acclimatize to the situation. There are three important aces on the edifice of which human resilience finds its own onuses, and they are adoption, adaptation, and acclimatization. Permit me to say so. To my limited understanding, I think that these are the three aces on which human resilience unfolds itself in the realistic form. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue is, today we are really in a great, unfortunate and uncertain situation. Knowing not where is the way forward, knowing not what is the way out, knowing for sure that there is no radical cure to the present COVID situation. The real difficulties are lit large on the face of it. But then, is the alternative to give up? Is the alternative to shun away? Is the alternative to run away? Or the best alternative is to take it headlong? And it is here that the real toughness of resilience is tested. Classical phrase goes, when the going gets tough, tough get going. This is a tough going, but then who is to go? It is the tough who are to go. What is this toughness? Toughness is not the mass of the body. Toughness is not weight of the body. Toughness is not sense of the body. Toughness is not any other perspective, but toughness is directly proportional to the resilience that you harbor within your own self, and resilience that you are in a position to build up in collectivity for the purposes of sustaining, sustenance, and ending up in dominance. That is exactly what my understanding of human sustenance is all about. Difficulties ultimately in toughness and unpredictabilities are necessary. They are inevitable. Life cannot be a bed of roses. And even if it is to be a bed of rose, I am yet to come across a beautiful rose which has not harbored itself in its thorns. I am just tempted to quote small few lines which Rameshwar Shukla Anchal in his poetic dispensation very categorically stated. जो अडिग रहता है अड़ा तूफान में बरसात में, वही तारा टूट जाता है शरद की रात में, मुक्त जीवन की प्रगति भी द्वंद में संघात में, फूल कांटों में खिला था, सेज पर मुरझा गया. जब कांटों में था तो खिला था, और जब सेज पर पड़ा तो कब मुरझा करके गुमसुम हो गया पता तक नहीं चला. कांटों में खिला था और सेज में मुरझा गया. When it was being tested, when the difficulties were rounded, when the thorns were rounded, it was in its full bloom. But when it was put into absolute comfort zone, it absolutely got morosed and marooned. This is not philosophy that I'm wanting to advocate before you. This is exactly what is the testified, testimonized perspective of resilience that I'm wanting to put across. Difficulties do come, and they test what? They test your patience. I always say, antibodies will be generated out of what? It is the antigens which are responsible for the generation of antibodies. The entire immune system of the body, whose exposure is expected to be the best immunogenic, it is one who has sustained maximum antigens. It is the larger scope of exposure to antigens that the antibodies gamete stands generated, and the immune profile and immune modulation is at its peak. Who has not faced antigens, he will never know what antibodies are. Therefore, all these difficulties, these toughness, these uncertainties, they are the antigens which are expected to be testing and stimulating the immune system of the human body individually and collectively, and result in generating those antibodies out of the immune system, which will be a form of vaccination for the posterity to follow in its own footsteps. It is that dimension, ladies and gentlemen, which I view in the context of resilience. The issue is, where exactly lies the way forward? Today, we are gripped into a situation. I have got 4 important things to put across to this learned gathering in terms of my humble understanding for its analytical dissection and analytical dispensation. I believe the first thing is that any anxiety, it is expected to generate negative emotions as a matter of fact. The first requirement is acceptance of those negative emotions. They have to be accepted. They cannot be negated. They cannot be shunned out. They are there. They have to be accepted on the face of it, and therefore granting acceptance. And what is that acceptance? That acceptance is COVID has come to stay as a matter of reality. I will exist with it to defeat it. I will not exist with it to get defeated at its hands. That is a positive, pragmatic resilience, which is first accepting the negative emotions. It is not just accepting the new negative emotions. We will have to work out new routines for our own self. And those are expected to be creative, altered routines, which are satisfying, which are soothing, and which are in a position to go in for rearranging and regrouping ourselves in a sense of reinventing and discovering our own self. Human invention and human discoveries in abstract is one part of it. But then crisis makes me discover within myself. Crisis makes me reinvent myself. Crisis makes me regroup myself. Crisis makes me reorganize myself. Crisis makes me reshape myself. And crisis makes me reflect. Crisis makes me relate. And crisis mandates me to reframe. All these are opportunities. Every threat, it generates opportunities. And therefore, these opportunities are expected to be harbored. These opportunities are expected to be harnessed. They are required to be nurtured, shaped, articulated, chiseled, and then make it bloom. And when it blooms in the real form, nothing else blooms in that name. Ladies and gentlemen, it is your and my resilience which blooms in the real form of expected manifestation. That sense of where exactly it is embedded in. Let me say so, it is embedded in 2 important things. It is embedded in optimism. There cannot be, until and unless there is a ray of hope which I am looking into, life cannot sustain in a perception of blind tunnel. There has to be a ray of light. And that ray of light is the sense of optimism. Again, I am tempted to quote those 4 important little lines, which I think they are the real instigation for all of us to be optimistic. Difficulties are tough. They are tall. But then poet very categorically says, यह भी अगर मान लें ऊंची पर्वत की चोटी है, किंतु फावड़े के समक्ष धरती पर आकर लोटी है, यही इरादे साथ लिए हर संकट में तू बढ़ता चल, दुख की ऊंची दीवारों की उम्र बहुत ही छोटी है. It is that sense of determination, which comes out of positivism, that positivism and determination which generates a sense of optimism, and that sense of optimism which makes you not only walk, which makes you walk with a degree of authoritative certainty for the purposes of tiding over that crisis, which is baffling, which is hurting, which is harming, and which is destabilizing your tranquility, and which is cause of various negative emotions that get generated there too. Ladies and gentlemen, if optimism was not there in the minds of doers, world would not have been a fit place to live. The fact that this world has ever progressed, the progression never stopped. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, as a medical student, as a medical teacher, as a medical professional, when I look into 500 years history of modern medicine, believe me, had it not been plague, bacteriology would not have been born. Had it not been cholera, parasitology would not have seen the light of the day. Has it not been Spanish flu, virology would not have come into its existence. These are the manifestations of sciences which today are in a position to guide the entire shape of modern medicine in the interest of men and mankind. What have been the focus and what have been the focal points for the purposes of generation of this? These were the challenges which got generated out of natural situations, which were tackled, and that tackling resulted in new dawn emerging with a wider vistas of modernity, knowledge, information, creativity, innovation, and ultimately intuitive imagination of mankind at its best. Every threat that men and mankind have faced, the end result have been greater beautification, greater essence, greater civilized society, greater egalitarianism, greater intellect, greater creativity, greater innovation. Therefore, why should I blame the threat? Why should I blame the uncertainty? It is my resilience which makes me tide over it. It is your resilience which makes you tide over it. It is our resilience which makes us tide over it. And it is human resilience which makes humanity tide over all crises of all types at all times and emerge in the new frame, in the new form, in the new divine essence with Almighty's wishes as blessings. And therefore, resilience is the name of that bird called Sphinx, which is capable of making bird rise from the grave and rise from the ashes. The only name that I would like to name the resilience is the Sphinx, the Sphinx, and the Sphinx. Ladies and gentlemen, a small parable which I think I should be in a position to put across, and that is very commonly used phrase, which all of us are well versed with. Man ke hare har hai, man ke jeete jeet. Defeats and victories are not decided realistically on the battlefield. They manifest on the battlefield, but they are decided only in our minds. Minds which are decisive, minds which are determined, minds which are organized, minds which are full of valor, minds which generate vitality. First, mind wins the battle, and then individual fights the battle in the battlefield to emerge victorious. In this mind that we contemplate, man ke hare hare hai, it is the mother repository of resilience that we contemplate for ourselves. It is out of that sense of optimism, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19, just as all epidemics have been tided over, this shall be tided over. And I am re-emphasizing the word shall. Human history bears a testimony. Therefore, that it is a certainty that our knowledge, our intellect, our concerted efforts, our quest, our zeal, our enthusiasm, it will tide over even this crisis like any other crisis. But then, when we will write the history of our victory over COVID-19, that history can be written only in one word, and that would be, what was the cause of this human great victory over COVID-19 pandemic? And the answer, ladies and gentlemen, would be, it was human resilience which was responsible for it. It is that resilience that you have picked it up for the purposes of discussion today. I do not know whether whatever I have put across can be said to be a keynote address, but believe me, to all these intellectuals, my only quest was unloading myself in the context of this so tough and difficult situation that humanity is put across to, for the purposes of putting our concerted efforts to ensure that we emerge victorious, finally, as always has been the history. I am wanting to conclude this keynote address of mine in terms of the time which was allotted to me with those small optimistic lines penned down by Sahir Ludhianvi, the great Urdu poet, the great Shair, who, when was asked as to what are the best lines that he has penned in his entire creative life, without a minute's hesitation, he picked up these lines. And I think this optimism is nothing but the saga of human resilience. And he says, इन काली सदियों के सर से जब रात का आंचल ढलकेगा, जब सुख के सागर पिघलेंगे, जब दुख के सागर पिघलेंगे, जब सुख का सागर छलकेगा, जब अंबर झूम के नाचेगा और धरती नगमे गाएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी. It is not the dejection which is the essence of human resilience. It is that subha, that dawn, which we are expected to be emerging victorious over this entire situation through a collective human weapon called resilience, which will make us tide over even this crisis, as always it has been able to. This shall not be any exception. Therefore, on this optimistic, strong note, with full bloated resilience in my heart, emanating out of to be transmitted to all your hearts, and picking up your resilience for the incorporation in myself, thanking all of you, I conclude by saying, we shall, we will, and we will have to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mishra. And I think all the members of the audience would concur that there couldn't have been a more fitting keynote address. You not only placed resilience in the historical context, you kind of went on to define and explain various facets of human resilience. You gave it a universal sense by talking that it is a necessary response to the pervasive uncertainty caused by COVID, but uncertainty has become a modern way of life. So we would probably need it all the time. You gave us a wonderful kind of talisman saying that we needn't negate it. We even shouldn't attempt to negotiate it, but wisely and discreetly, we need to navigate through it. You really talked about toughness as the right response. There we need to adaptation and acclimatize ourselves to new relations. And when we face the challenges of life, you gave us the perspective that we should always think them as antigens that would produce antibodies within us and in a way inoculate us against the further challenges of life. You talked about the need to accept and need to reinvent. You emphasized on optimism and determination. You brought in beautifully the image of Sphinx, and with very poetic lines, you underlined the resolve to express resilience in our daily lives and actions. Thank you, Professor Mishra, for such an erudite, enlightening, meaningful, and apt discourse, which I'm sure would stimulate the distinguished scholars gathered here. Thank you, Professor Mishra.
So nice of you. Thank you. Thank you.
It is indeed a great opportunity, a pleasure and privilege for us as we move on to invite the head of the university family, a great educationist, a person who has a heart to nurture. Nurturing is one of the themes that we look for. And here, when I think of Professor Mittal, the Honorable Vice Chancellor, if I were to kind of describe him in one word, I would use the word nurture, because that is what he seems to be doing through all his words and actions. It would be indeed our pleasure and a great opportunity to hear to him. I invite Professor Ashok Mitaljee to enlighten us with his words.
Thank you, Professor S.P. Singh Sahab. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
So thanks, Professor S.P. Singh, for inviting me on this inaugural session. I'm very happy to see that our St. John's College, because St. John's College is my alma mater, along with Agra University, because I am a product of St. John's College. I did my BSc and MA Economics from St. John's College, and I started my career as a lecturer from St. John's College. So I'm very happy to see that my college or our college is organizing an international webinar on such a important theme, because the COVID-19 has given lot of shocks, lot of challenges to learn, and how to develop this resilience. I should say it's a very timely chosen topic. And I'm also very happy to see that you have a galaxy of experts like Professor Prakash Mishra, who is a medical scientist and a man of international repute, and other scholars you have invited today. Really, on behalf of Agra University, I thank all the resource persons that they have accepted our invitation, and they are with us, and they will share their knowledge with our students and teachers. Now, Professor Mishra has covered almost all the dimensions of human resilience, I suppose. And that's why the second speaker is always a disadvantage situation where first speaker is such a knowledgeable person, is such an intelligent person. The same situation is with me today, because I'm neither a student of medical sciences, nor psychology, nor English. And being a North Indian, I cannot challenge that I'm very fluent in English. So I speak Indian English, that way I should accept it at the first set. Anyway, I feel the resilience is such a situation in my working life for last 45 years. I have seen four types of persons. Persons, those who are gifted with these characteristics. I have seen many persons that they are having so strong resilience. They adapt the situation without any pain, without any complaint. They take it as natural. So I tell them, friend, you are God gifted. Some people I have seen, they have acquired this characteristic by some practice like yoga, meditation. So over a period of time, they develop this particular characteristic, and now they can adjust with any adverse situation within no time. And the third category of a person like me, whenever there is a adversity, then we try to adjust with it. As Professor Mishra has said very rightly, the first reaction always with any adversity is an anxiety. But God has given us a very strong instinct to live, desire to live. Then we think how to deal with adversities with our given limited means. Because to challenge any adversity or to fight against any odd, we need certain instruments. We need certain policies. So we think over it. And the fourth category, which I have seen also, that they are never ready to face any adversity. They take it as it is and they leave it everything on God. So I find this, but I'm not talking of the first category and the second category. If they are God gifted, they have acquired in India. There are a lot of examples. If you go to some religious places or in mountains, you find many persons, those who have acquired by other meditation or some yoga, by their spirituality. I'm talking of a common man. The life is full of uncertainty. Even when we wake up in the morning, we don't know what will be happening in the noon in the office, what will happen when we will come back from office to our house. So what I feel, minute of our life is with uncertainty. This, the uncertainties are of also many types. Some uncertainties are for few seconds. They come and they go immediately. Some live with us for some time, and some are long-term uncertainties. And accordingly, human beings are adapted to develop a policy to deal with them. And there is no doubt about, as Professor Mishra has said, कि इंसान वही है जो अनसर्टेनियों से जूझता हुआ आगे निकल जाए, जो नए सवेरे का हमेशा ध्यान रखे, ये मान के चले कि ये तो हर एक के जीवन में है. And it's also equally true. Those who are big persons, those who have a name and fame and done something globally or nationally, they have faced more uncertainties rather than a normal man like me. You take example from the world, all the big persons, they have faced with lot of uncertainty. Take the example of Mahatma Gandhi. He had lot of uncertainty with him. He has taken them as challenge. He has changed his lifestyle to deal with uncertainties and teach the people of this country how to face the uncertainty, how to live with it. The most important thing I feel, rather than to challenge the uncertainty, we should also learn ourselves how to live with them. Now, this corona virus and COVID-19 has taught us a lot of lessons. First thing, it has come as a shock as far as we were hearing news is from December onwards, January, in some February, that there are some cases in China and then in Europe, but we never thought of it that it will come to India. All of a sudden, in the month of March, we started having it, and there was some advisory from the MCI and other institutions that we should start wearing the face masks and we should have some distance. And all of a sudden, on 22nd of March, the Janta curfew was announced, and from 23rd morning, the lockdown was declared. And it was declared in such a haste, without sensitizing the masses, without informing about anything. Therefore, it came as a great shock. If I would have suggested, if the government, because Professor Mishra is with the government very closely, so he might be able, and he is in a policy making also, that if government would have advised general masses from the month of January itself, that this may happen, be prepared for it, try to use this, try to do that, then would not have taken as a surprise. And our lifestyle has become such a, you can say, busy all the day, particularly for the metropolis town and the A and B grade town, that since morning we start and go to office, come back in the evening or late night. So all of a sudden, if you ask someone that you are, आप घर में एक तरह से कहिए house arrest थे, वो क्या सिचुएशन होगी, लोगों के दिमागों पे क्या एकदम से हो। अच्छा, उस वक्त भी ये था कि इसमें भी गवर्नमेंट ने बिल्कुल उस तरह काम किया, जैसे रेलवे स्टेशन जाइए और ट्रेन जब लेट होनी शुरू होती है तो ये जानते हुए कि भी ट्रेन 4 घंटे लेट है, मेरी कई बार स्टेशन मास्टर से हुई, जस्ट टू मेंटेन द पब्लिक पेशेंस, वो अनाउंस करेंगे 15 मिनट लेट है, फिर आधा घंटे और हो गई, फिर 1 घंटे हो गई। लाइकवाइज इट वाज अनाउंस्ड फॉर ए वीक, then for another 3 weeks, then for other weeks. Now we are in the 4th lockdown stage and we don't know what will happen after 31st of May. So therefore the uncertainty, as Professor Mishra has said, is the most thing for which we have to develop a resilience. Some of the uncertainties are like that we can foresee and we can forecast. For example, if you are planning for spending some amount, you always keep some money extra कि भाई मार्केट जाने पे हो सकता है प्राइसेस बड़ी निकले, कोई अच्छी चीज पसंद आ जाए, तो keep extra money in your pocket. It's again also that you are trying to minimize the uncertainties. But this time, there was no way out how we can minimize the uncertainty, etc., but to develop a resilience. Those who can develop the resilience, and that's why was advised by the doctors, every day go for exercise, every day go for meditation, have some green vegetables, will develop your immunity, because there is a direct correlation between the resilience and your immunity system. Because if you are resilient, if you are aware of your anxiety or able to control them, your digestive system will be okay. You will be able to develop good body immunity. So all psychological factors affect our body, and resilience, I feel, is also a psychological concept. And we are having many psychologists who can suggest how to improve our resilience capacity or power of developing the resilience. So COVID has taught us a lot of things, and we are going to have a new normal. Of course, one day, as Professor Mishra has said, we will come back to our normalcy, but I feel we will not come to the same normalcy which we had before 23rd of March. We will have some new normal sort of a thing. Perhaps face masks are going to become a part of our day-to-day life. I also make a distinction between physical distancing and social distancing. Physical distancing, I feel, between the two persons. And social distancing means distancing from the crowd, from the group of the people. So we have to maintain for maybe months or years, we don't know. And by the time we will be allowed to avoid this distancing, we will be used to of it. Because we develop very thing, and perhaps our children will be used to, if the new generation will be used to of this, always keep some distance with others. Sometimes I also feel, because of all these things, are we going in a social isolation? Because it's also a cause of concern. I think I will meet sometime Professor Mishra. He has impressed me like thing, and I have heard about him a lot, but I will try to meet him. Sir.
Pleasure, sir. Pleasure.
The TV, the mobiles have already done some denting on our day-to-day life. Now, no children want to go to meet the relations. They are not interested to attend the functions of the family. They are always busy with their mobile. And therefore, I feel the social structure we were having in our young life or childhood, perhaps we all are missing. We were used to, sorry, I'm sure you will also be with a joint family. You might have been born and brought up in a joint family. Now we have a nuclear family. So whole family structure has changed. And that's why whenever there is an adversity, we feel more dent of in our day-to-day life. I have seen when it is a joint family, बहुत सी परेशानियां झंझावत आते थे, सब मिलजुल के झेल लेते थे, यही नहीं मालूम पड़ता था कब झंझावत आया, कब चला गया, परिवार के किस सदस्य ने कौन सा काम अपने ऊपर लेके निपटा दिया। अब परिवार में दो ही है, हस्बैंड वाइफ, छोटे बच्चे, तो जो भी झंझावत जीवन में आ रहे हैं उन्हीं दोनों को झेलने हैं, किसी और से सहानुभूति की भी अब उम्मीद नहीं रह गई है। तो उस परिप्रेक्ष्य में सर, इस सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग इत्यादि से मुझे लगता है हमारे बच्चे और सोशल आइसोलेशन में चले जाएंगे, और जो इंडिया का एक कल्चर था उसको प्रिजर्व करने में कहीं हमको थोड़ी सी दिक्कतें आएंगी। इसलिए आई एम सीइंग इट्स सम permanent changes in our lifestyle, even if we come to a new normal. So therefore, sir, you also suggest us, we will ask Professor Singh to invite you, how we can preserve our culture, how we can maintain the social relations and the society. I'm talking, sir, only in Indian context. So therefore, with these words, I will finish that human resilience is a God gifted. Some are lucky to have more share of it. Some are having a less share of it, but it is a characteristic. By practice, we can acquire. So I request all of us, those who are listening to me, please go for meditation, please go for yoga, and try to develop this particular resilience, because without resilience, we cannot face the adversities of our life and take it granted. Everyone's having lot of adversities, uncertainties in everyone's life. So no one can say that I never had any adversity, I never have come across with some uncertainty. If we can prepare ourselves, and COVID has given that, if we can face an adversity like COVID-19, perhaps we can face any adversity of life now, time to come. With these words, I thank you again, the organizers, the Department of Psychology and English, for organizing such a beautiful webinar on such a very important issue and giving me an opportunity to be with you for some time. Thank you very much. And once again, I thank Professor Mishra and all the other resource person for accepting our offer and sparing their valuable time and giving us their important views. And Professor Mishra and other resource person, I also extend an invitation to visit Agra. Whenever you are passing through Agra or planning to visit Agra, please let me know. I will be very happy to host you. Be my guest, be the guest of the university. Agra, all we know, to foreign, my participants, I am saying, it is the international tourist place. It is one of the 7 wonders of the world. So I invite my foreign friends also, whenever after this COVID is over, when the normalcy is coming back, try to visit India and try to come to Agra. With these words, I thank you once again, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom which you gave us. You really
already
told
इनका
us
हो
and
गया है.
taught that different people, some people can have resilience as God gift, others can still nurture it with practice. You talked that anxiety is not a proper response, but we need to learn adjustment in midst of the uncertainty in life situations, which you so clearly described. And you gave examples of big and eminent people who faced more uncertainties than all of us. You warned us towards the challenge that now the new normalcy that we can ever hope to arrive at would be a new normalcy that would again require us to adjust, adapt, and adopt the norms. Thank you, sir, for talking about the network of social relationships, which in our own cultural context are the natural ways to endow or invest human beings with resilience. I'm sure for the scholars present here, we would be willing to take up this challenge or exhortation from you that we need to deliberate more and more on it and come up with our own indigenous norms. And we really thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. You all will agree with me that today's inaugural session was very interesting, educative, and at the same time, thought-provoking. In fact, it has been the most inclusive inaugural session, and the credit for this goes to our highly esteemed speakers. On behalf of the organizing committee of English and Psychology Department, I take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks to those who have directly or indirectly contributed to this webinar on human resilience in the times of crisis, organized by St. John's College, Agra. First and foremost, I would give glory to the Almighty God for his benevolence and thank him for his faithful love that never ceases. We also thank him for giving us the grace and wisdom to organize a webinar of such a magnitude. I take this opportunity to extend our gratefulness and hearty thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashok Mittal, who is not only a great economist, but a great teacher too. In him, we see passions for students and younger faculty members. We really feel so proud and privileged when he assumed the responsibility of becoming the Vice Chancellor. We in St. John's see him as a father figure who understands us, who understands our struggles, and yet continues to guide us in correct direction. Our one who wants us to walk the path we have always believed in. And sir, we assure you that your motivation, your encouragement will go a long way in helping us to achieve our own dreams of excellence. Professor Mittal, your presence and your words of wisdom mean a lot for St. John's College and the august gathering of different scholars from different parts of the world. We really extend our hearty thanks to you. Thank you, sir. I also take this opportunity to thank Honorable Dr. Prakash Mishra, who is no stranger to the media world. His zestful personality with an unsagging and unflinching enthusiasm to motivate the younger generation. Great intellectual, a wonderful orator, an amazing conversationalist, and inspiration to all. Someone who enthralls us with his eloquence and keeps us spellbound. An amazing person, a worthy role model, a great leader, and you have really inspired us in this distressing moment of the pandemic to be more optimistic, positive frame of mind, and resilient. The three modes which you told, fight, fright, and flight. Sure, we will fight back this situation. कांटों में खिला लेकिन सेज पे मुरझा गया. Wonderful line, sir. In this crisis period, we will definitely reshape ourselves. Thank you, sir, for your contribution, time, and your edifying presence here. My heartfelt thanks to Professor S.P. Singh, Principal, St. John's College, Agra. It is his guidance and sage counsel that inspires us to undertake even the tasks that are considered difficult and alien, such as this. His constant support and encouragement is a source of inspiration and motivation for all of us. Thank you, sir. Words of thanks go out for our webinar convener, Dr. Oswald Simon, Head, English Department, for his enthusiastic support and the idea behind conceptualizing this event. Thank you, sir. I am grateful to all our participants and viewers who are present with us and have encouraged us with their comments. We would like to thank all the support and technical staff that have worked behind the scenes to make this event successful. Thanks everyone once again, and God bless us all. Stay home, stay safe. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana Patankar, for your vote of thanks. Now I would request Dr. Priyanka Masi to lead us into the plenary session and introduce the plenary speakers.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, all of you, and welcome to the webinar. I would take this opportunity to welcome the speakers for our plenary session. The first one in the series as I go, I would like to introduce Hannah, who is a highbrow professional and a very passionate person. And as her CV goes very long, Hannah is a licensed mental health therapist and certified group psychotherapist with nearly 20 years of experience, and she has a master's degree in special education and counseling psychology. In addition, she holds multiple specialist certifications. She has done her extensive study and work in neuroscience, informed treatment of anxiety and trauma, and she worked as an individual, family, and group therapist. Her work experience in both the US and abroad has given her a unique perspective and a sense of relating with all kinds of people. She has an engaging communication style and can convey difficult information in a compassionate and understandable manner. Currently, Hannah runs her own company, the Potential Finders Network, where she writes the blogs, maintains a small private practice, and provides consultation services. Her endeavors include work as the group therapy program coordinator for a well-regarded inpatient hospital in the Seattle area, where she creates dynamic groups and trains facilitators. She integrates whole person understanding as well. We are very pleased and honored that we would have you as our guest speaker in the plenary session. Welcome, Hannah, and I have been seeing you. You are logged in since the inaugural. And now to continue with our second guest, we have Karuna Nagrani. Karuna Nagrani, she is a motivated support coordinator with a group having different psychological needs. She has the mentor experience and for the exceptional people. She is well versed in learning disabilities and has got group social skills interventions. She has excellent knowledge of psychology, the therapies, and the counseling. She provides to the patients with appropriate care for their individual situations. Her journey as a clinical psychologist started way back in 2006 from the Nagpur Mental Hospital to Masina Hospital, Mumbai, and presently she is working as a clinical psychologist in London. Welcome, Karuna, to our panel of guests. Next in the list, we have got Dr. Ashok Saha. Ashok Saha, he is currently working as a professor at the Department of Psychology at Jagannath University, and he has been the ex-chairman of the same department. He has been implementing a project titled Advanced Teaching Learning in Psychology. Dr. Saha has published several chapters in many books, and he has published almost 55 research articles. He has 4 books published of his own authorship. Dr. Saha has received 16 research projects so far from different organizations like the World Bank, the GC, SSRC, and the list goes on. We are very thankful so much, Dr. Saha, for being our guest speaker in this session. Next in the list, we have got Father Biju Joseph. He is a highly qualified and intellectual person with a great liking for his work. And I have known him since he was doing his MSW, and I've seen that zeal which he has to work in the field. But Father Biju has nearly 10 years of experience as a counselor, capacity building and empowerment specialist in the area of HIV/AIDS, gender-based violence, and social protection with the specific focus on skill development and providing employment to the poor and marginalized sector. He has worked extensively with people living with HIV, female sex workers, women who are victims of gender-based violence, human trafficking, and child sexual abuse. Father Biju has the working experience and substantial exposure with healthcare, corporate sector, and the community-based organization. Father Biju has been involved in developing the documentary films, the case studies, and he heads the responsibility as the director of residential school facility, particularly designed for children living with HIV. They focus on their education, health, and overall quality of life. Biju's additional job includes mainly providing handholding, mentoring, training, and monitoring the team of staff and children. He is a postgraduate in human rights and master's in social work. Presently, he is based in Madrid in Spain. And we are very grateful to have you as our speaker today. And even Father Biju is logged in since the inaugural session. We welcome all of you. And now for the further introduction of the other guests, Dr. Isaac will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Masi. Good morning, everyone. I shall introduce to you the other three eminent speakers from the discipline of English literature for the plenary session. I shall begin with Dr. Sanjay Mukherjee. Dr. Mukherjee completed his graduate and postgraduate studies from the Department of English, MS University, Baroda. He has a PhD in British cultural criticism under the guidance of the renowned scholar, late Professor Avdesh Kumar Singh, an alumnus of St. John's. He is currently professor in the Department of English and Comparative Literary Studies, Saurashtra University, Rajkot. With an experience of about 25 years of PG teaching and research, with the Dolarai Mankad Best Researchers Award in 2007 by the Saurashtra University. His publications include, besides several papers, 2 books: English Literature in the Romantic and Victorian Periods, 1798 to 1914, Survey and Interpretation, and Critical Discourses and Colonialism. In 2011, he was awarded the Fulbright equivalent SUSI Fellowship for an academic visit to the University of Louisville, Kentucky, USA. He was also invited by the University of British Columbia, Canada in 2008. He has written poems, some of which have been published. The next speaker on our panel is Dr. Shayanti Talwar. She completed her doctorate in English literature from the University of Mumbai. Besides being a teacher of literature at Bidco College, affiliated to Pune University, she is also a professionally qualified English language teacher, trainer, and educator, having a CELTA and TKT certification from Cambridge English Assessment, University of Cambridge, UK. She has trained extensively across India for the British Council, conducting principals and teacher training workshops on 21st century core skills that include critical thinking, creativity, and communication, student leadership, and digital literacy. Dr. Talwar is a senior presenter of Cambridge English Assessment and resource person for the Oxford University Press. She has developed modules on teaching learning strategies for Swayam, the digital platform launched by the Government of India. Dr. Talwar has authored 2 books besides several research papers. She is the recipient of the National Award for Best Teacher in 2014 at the 14th National Awards ceremony organized by the National Education Society, Mumbai. The last speaker that I will be introducing is Dr. Ravindra Pratap Singh, who is the professor of English at the Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow. Professor Singh is an award-winning playwright, poet, and academician. He has 28 books, 108 research papers, and 4 foreign-funded assignments to his credit. He has been the member of the Board of Studies, RDCs, of approximately 10 universities and institutions across India, and is the chairman of the Curriculum Committee of English for CBSE, New Delhi. Professor Singh has worked as NAC peer team member and consultant to several foreign publication houses. He has guided 19 PhDs and 39 MPhils and completed 5 research projects. He is the recipient of 12 awards, which include the Saraswati Samman 2018, Bhartendu Harishchandra Award 2017, and the Shikshak Shri Samman by the government of Uttar Pradesh in 2015. Now I request the chair for the session, Dr. R.P. Singh, to take the session forward. Thank you.
Professor Singh, I would request you to please unmute yourself. The members of the panel, Professor Singh, Professor Saha, please unmute yourself. Those who are not on the panel, I would request them to remain muted for the sake of the clarity.
Good morning, greetings friends, academicians and esteemed scholars from India and abroad. We are meeting this hot morning, and this is also a kind of resilience. I'm grateful to this esteemed college in a historical city to invite me for this session, And this is really a phase that every one of us is enshrined into different kind of practices, and those practices are of self-retrospection. While thinking about this seminar this morning, I wrote some lines for a poem, and I will read those lines before talking about the theme, before going ahead for this talk. It is a soft resilience. Across the window pane, silent vultures dash up near, raspy, drawn out, hissing sounds, grunting noises of the hungry pods, yapping sounds, a grunting noise, and the vinets so close, broken glasses, my lens is dull. Anxious time is smothered to lull, so vertical, so cross-strained. Hardiness in autumns and bruised, yes, apprised a drained spring. We saw him going, splashing the tears. Hungry dogs bark anger through the night, and the toads smear a trill and the croak all across the bridge in dark. Household tremors, yet the sin is killed, no matter the effect. The fever word is flinched, so scared, it forgot, yep, its damnable iteration. Wrecked metropolis and economic zones come again a phase mundane moments, bounce back to consciousness, gleaning, willowing, a soft resilience. The roots have flown some words on strings, love and dawn in a cherished mystic chasm, a soft resilience. Dear friends, don't we think that this is also a form of resilience? We are sitting together here in this cyber world, in this virtual world, braving all the odds at our households. When we open the door, we find a picture that is quite different, quite new. quite intriguing and quite bewildering. So, what is resilience? We have learned a lot with these two luminaries, the two speakers, Dr. Prakash Mishraji and Professor Ashok Mitaljee, the concept of resilience and the perspective of it strewn over different forms, different domains of academia and human life. When it comes to the practical aspect of resilience, I am of the view that it cannot be shared from the industry of knowledge. Industry of knowledge can seldom transfer the perspective of resilience from one to another. Here, what I can say that books seldom teach us that much what even a small step, a small comma, semicolon, and paragraph can discuss, that can talk in our day-to-day mundane life. Here we have a galaxy of scholars, 6 different scholars from different walks of life. Academicians are there, professors are there, psychologists, researchers, practitioners. I welcome the 6 learned panelists, Professor Sanjay Mukherjee sir, from Saurashtra University, Rajkot, Professor Ashok Kumar Saha, Jagannath University, Dhaka, Bangladesh, Father Biju Joseph, who is a social worker, as has been already, he has been introduced, Dr. Karuna Nagrani, clinical psychologist from London, Miss Hannah, behavioral coach and trainer, and then Shayanti Talwar. We'll begin with Professor Sanjay Mukherjee. And Professor Mukherjee is an established scholar in the field of literature and culture. Professor Mukherjee, may I request you to present your paper, please? To present your views. Hello.
Hello. Am I audible now?
Good morning, Professor Mukherjee. Hello.
Hello. Yes. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning.
Professor Singh, if you permit me to kind of request you, actually Hannah is in Washington, Seattle, and
sure.
So if we could have her first, and then we could carry on, since it's already very late in the night.
Yeah, no problem, no issue, because I was given the list, so I followed the list according. So may I request Miss Hannah to please come over, please, Miss Hannah.
Hello.
Sorry, sir, Professor Mukherjee, sir. Sorry, we will take the next speaker. I hope you don't mind. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Miss Hannah, we welcome you to this session.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's okay, audible.
Awesome, very good. Thank you everybody. It is an absolute honor to be here. Yes, I am in Seattle, so it is about 11 p.m. at night. I'm feeling very humbled right now to be here. I did spend many years living in Gurgaon, right near New Delhi, and I love India and have had the opportunity to work there. But here I am back in the US. And I was really thrilled when I was asked to speak tonight, because I think this is such an important idea, nurturing resilience in the midst of a pandemic. I can't think of anything better. And when I was pondering what in the world will I say, I just went right back to my love for words. Words are so important. They convey so much information. So I first considered the words themselves, like resilience, which we've heard today, which implies the ability to persevere and to retain or recover oneself under pressure. And then the idea of nurturing, which speaks to providing nourishment and support. And in hearing about fighting and hearing about not giving up and having optimism, it just really resounds with me, this idea of providing nourishment and support for that actual battle. Now, I think a pandemic is a pressure like few of us have ever had to endure before. So I was wondering, how would I summarize such an enormous thing in concept that I could cover in just a few minutes? And I decided on a 2-word theme to guide us. Anybody who knows me and works with me knows that my job is often as a science interpreter. Before I got my master's in special ed, I have a bachelor's in applied math and physics. So I've always been very interested in how things work. And so I wanted us, my job is often to have a practical way of thinking about things so that when we leave the room, we know what to do. And so in order to guide us, I have a 2-word theme, and that is wise wholeheartedness. That is what I feel like will help guide us in our nurturing ability. Again, with the words, I want to understand the very multi-dimensional nature of both of those words. Wisdom, for example, includes thoughtful consideration of past, present, and future. If I'm acting with wisdom, I'm going to bring my experience, my current needs, my mindfulness about my current needs, and big picture goals. This idea that of the new normal, the idea of what life will become as a big picture. One thing that strikes me is we have never been what we were. We are always changing, like was pointed out earlier. There's always uncertainty. And so if we bring all this to the table with us as we embark on caring for ourselves and others, that is wisdom. And then as for wholeheartedness, there I believe we have more of a 4-dimensional nature as human beings. None of us is a remote island unto themselves. Every person is connected to another person or to a system of some sort. We are all made of mind, body, spirit, and social connections. We are not one or the other, we are all of it. And each of these areas requires care, rejuvenation, and discipline. So how do we do this? Well, I thought we should look at each one of these 4 dimensions. Mind is not the same thing as brain. You are not your brain. Our mind is that part of us that is that ability to stand back and have an objective sort of counsel with ourselves. It's that process of regulating what's going on internally. So we must first realize that we are not thought and emotion. We are more than that. We include that, but we are more than that. We can, we have the ability to observe ourselves and make decisions with wisdom. We have a body, which includes our brain, and we have to realize we have limits and potential. We can be sad and happy. I hear a lot of people here, many people have tragedy and they don't want to ask for help. And then there are many people who are actually doing okay. They can work online, and then they feel bad because they feel okay. We struggle so much in our body being able to tolerate multiple feelings, but we can have those. And that's not a character trait or a character flaw. We also want to understand this idea of spirit. We have been so wonderfully wired and put together, and we have to recognize what makes us, us. There's over 7 billion people on the planet right now, and however many that have ever lived or ever will live, and there's one presentation of you ever, and that is precious, and we need to tap into that. We need to search for meaning and purpose in all of this. And then the 4th dimension, which is our social connections. Though we have to be distanced from each other to some degree right now, we have to find ways to stay connected. We are all united in our uncertainty, in our fear. It shows in different ways, but we're all united with that. So because I'm a practical teacher, I wanted to give us some ideas of what we can do with each one of those dimensions. For our mind, first of all, it's important to disengage from fear-focused and highly emotive imagery and print media and social media, all those things that are there to provoke feeling. When our bodies are overwhelmed with chemicals, with reactions, with thoughts, it's very difficult for our mind and spirit to work through that. If you think of your attention, of your ability to use your mind, kind of like a watering flower pot, it's important to notice the weeds in the garden and to make a plan to take care of those. But we want to water the flowers and the things that are going to present, the ideas, the optimism that was mentioned. That's where we put the majority of our attention once we have created our plans. For our body, we have to remember that we need movement and motion. We need nourishment. Many times people are so distracted, they're not eating, and they need to do that. We need to have rest and fun. Don't discount fun. It's okay to enjoy a quiet moment or a game with the children. The brain needs reminders. We need to remember and have things around us to remind us of the things that we want to think and that we want to feel, and gratitude. Gratitude is one of the greatest things that scans all four dimensions, really. If you come to the end of a day and you feel like you don't have anything to be thankful for or anything that gave you joy, figuring out ways to add that to your day is something that can really help. What can you do tomorrow to help with the acclimation, to help with the anxiety, the anger, and the fear? Spirit is also something to attend to. There's a difference between loneliness and solitude, and this might be a chance for some people to connect with themselves, to connect with God, to connect with quiet and nature and beauty. But we also have to remember the social aspect, and we need to ask for help when we need it. We need to be able to reach out in innovative and creative ways. Because of the practicality of things, I'll share a new one I've heard lately, which is called cookie bombing, that they do here, where people bake cookies and put them in boxes and take them to neighbors and ring doorbells and run away. And these things we can do in order to become creative. Brene Brown, who's a top researcher on shame in the United States, has a wonderful quote where she says, vulnerability, which is what we need in order to connect to each other. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Without that vulnerability, we won't change and we won't innovate. We have to put ourselves out there. So have grace for yourself. Please remember the shining, multifaceted gems that you all are. Allow your emotions in the present moment, keeping the big picture in mind as we take this pandemic road one step, one moment at a time. As we do this, I believe as a whole, we will emerge stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best in the days ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your nice presentation. While listening to the talk of Ms. Hannah, I was recalling what a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty. The famous lines of Shakespeare in Hamlet. So we have immense capability to stand, and you have just told that we are not brood we are not woods. We have to create something new. We have to do something better for the humanity in these times of resilience. So in this chain of deliberations, may I request our next speaker. He is Father Biju Joseph from Spain. Father Biju Joseph, hello. Father Biju Joseph.
Please unmute
May I
yourself.
request Father Biju Joseph to this session?
Please unmute yourself, Father.
Unmute myself.
Father,
okay.
Welcome, Father, to this August gathering.
Yes. Am I audible? Am I audible to everyone now?
You are audible.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Yes, you are audible.
Fine. Yeah. Let me first of all thank all the present here, to all the organizers of this great event. And I really wanted to thank Dr. Priyanka very specially for inviting me to present a paper on human resilience in times of crisis. I'm going to talk more about nurturing resilience in individuals and communities. First of all, just to start a little bio of myself, I am Father Biju. I'm a chameleon. Chameleons are a congregation, like a congregation which you may know, like Mother Teresa, working in the field of rehabilitating people who are marginalized in the community.
Capacity,
Hello.
and adaptation. It captures people survive a variety of circumstances, but thrive in the face of such kind of adversity.
Hello.
Degree of risk is required to demonstrate resilience. There must be a challenge over so that the scope for improvement will follow.
Hello.
Some aspects of resilience appear relevant across risk cultures. Domain-specific resilience processes in the face of complex risks. Resilience may be seen in one domain, school.
Yes, Father, we can hear you. You continue.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm a chameleon priest belonging to a chameleon society in India. So chameleons are a worldwide community with a 450 years history. The core of chameleon activity revolves around the care of the sick, among the poor, needy, and the abundant. In India, the chameleon activity started in 1996 at the peak of the human immunovirus outbreak, which was claiming many lives, and there was no proper protocol or treatment. We at the Chameleon Center in Bangalore saw many deaths and have dealt with the aftermath of the HIV wave, which left many crippled, abandoned, and orphaned. Over the last 2.5 decades, we have seen the full life cycle of human survival in the midst,
there are three key factors
in the middle of the society, which shuns those infected by the HIV virus. We provided direct care to thousands of HIV-infected patients abandoned by society through our hospices in 7 locations across India. Provided outreach care to tens of thousands who were fortunate to remain integrated to society while we monitored them and provided supporting care on need basis.
But a process and involves a complex
on
interaction.
many orphaned or abandoned children, providing them care, education, medical and mental health intervention.
But
Lead them towards safe
individuals
adulthood.
embedded entity
200 such children live in
environment of
communities
personal
at this time.
relationships, culture,
This
and
is the international organization, Chameleon Disaster Service International. The disaster relief service unit operates across the world to every disasters that affect humanity. wanted to specifically talk on the topic, understand the challenges in nurturing resilience. Resilience can mean different things to different people. Staying caught in a collapsed building after an earthquake, more than 24 hours, dealing with hunger for a few days lost in a forest, walking a long distance, kilometers to reach home without transportation after lockdown are seen as extreme form of resilience. But here I would like to say a few stories that should make you think about resilience from a broader perspective. Let me tell you the story of Jinsi. Jinsi came to us from a lower middle class background when it was found that her husband, the only earning member in her family, was weak and dying of HIV. She soon learned that she too was infected. On top of this, she was soon to learn that soon after she and her husband moved to a facility for care and rehabilitation, her husband's family, including 2 young children, decided to cut all ties with her. They sold her home and moved to an unknown location. For Jinsi, the challenge was not just to accept that she needs to live with HIV forever, but also to deal with the agony of being abandoned for no mistake of hers. Today, Jinsi has fought her way back from hopelessness to a point where she works meaningfully and has already connected back with her children. This is a story of resilience of countless adults who knock on the door of Snehadan, our chameleon center in Bangalore. Let me tell you another story of resilience. Manjula works with us now, having grown up most of her life at Snehadan or other villages. Her last memories of the time with her family are of initially accompanying her father and mother to the hospital when her father was sick. Then after his death, as an 8-year-old alone, taking her weak and dying mother to the hospital. Her last memory of her mother is when her weak and dying mother decided to put her malnourished and starving child in a bus known to us picking up abandoned children. Manjula does not have HIV, but she does not know any life outside of orphanages and HIV centers. She needs to deal with nutritional issues, anger issues, learn to fend for herself so that she can go and compete with an unforgiving world outside. We at Snehadan are constantly helping her build resilience. I could recount many more similar stories of resilience at the time of Ebola virus outbreak in Africa. We were the only group of missionaries who headed to Africa on Ebola mission. And we volunteered to risk our lives and bury the dying in the midst of compelling human tragedy. Or when I accompanied the team of volunteers to rehabilitate the displaced in Nepal after the earthquake in the year 2015. Instead, I would like to focus on what it means to nurture resilience among individuals and communities from a long-term perspective. The need for a long-term intervention to build resilience. Firstly, human tragedies are unavoidable. Virus outbreaks, other communicable diseases like tuberculosis, hepatitis, rabies, leprosy have constantly ravaged the earth, bringing separation, crippling and sudden changes to socio-economic environment for millions. During and in the immediate aftermath of a tragedy, government agencies play a major role in providing evacuation, medical care, temporary food and shelter, etc. But in the view of the individual who receive this support, the support from these agencies in a disaster can be described by common phrases such as survival of the fittest, crying baby gets the most milk, it only reaches a limited number and the distribution is uneven. In reality, for the survivors, the ordeal starts from the point the government agencies stop their intervention. These there will be millions who are orphaned, abandoned, or left with a single working or non-working parent, or having to deal with multiple crippled persons to care for, with no time or emotion to even to mourn the death of those who left. These individuals desperately need assistance in many different forms. When such individuals do not get the required support from their families, their sense of helplessness makes them seek divine intervention. And that brings them in touch with religious organizations. Christian missionaries have played an active role in helping the helplessness, and the Chameleon mission has been even more focused in this area. Building resilience in individuals. The first point that I wanted to focus is on survival. The initial needs of any individual reaching out to the chameleons are always for basic survival. In our experience, those reaching out to us for help usually are destitute, abandoned, starved, rejected, dejected, and at risk of death. So our immediate attention is to meet their survival needs: food, medicine, clothes, shelter. The second important highlight is trust. Once the initial needs are met, then our work is to integrate them with others who are in the same fate as them. This gives them a sense of belonging and helps them to deal with their sense of despair. Some survivors need intense counseling before they can start trusting others around them and change themselves to fit into the common social setting. Improving self-worth. Once these individuals are able to be integrated with the community for those with the similar problems and taught to share and care for each other, then our next goal is to address their own self-image, which is usually at the lowest when they come to us. This takes time and effort and expertise in psychosocial analysis and interventions. The tremendous depth of experience we have in the field from dealing with a multitude of low self-esteem individuals have equipped the team of Snehadan to make powerful changes to the individual's sense of self-worth. And this really is the most important step in building long-term resilience. Hope. Throughout all the above intervention, instilling in them a sense of hope, be it through religious influences or through counseling or through institutionalized behavior, among all those interacting with them, are all critical to the success of our interventions. Sustained monitoring. Oftentimes, individuals who have faced trauma from major disasters in their lives tend to lose faith in themselves from time to time. From this, we designed our outreach program so that individuals we have fought back in life are reintegrated into society, can connect back to us on need basis. That way, we are able to guide those who lose faith in themselves and slip into despair. Building resilience in communities. Not all disasters end up in a situation wherein we have to intervene at an individual level, directly providing food, shelter, and care on a long-term basis. For large scale of disasters where whole sections of society are rendered helpless, an approach of helping each individual becomes impractical and less impactful. In these instances, the better approach is to build resilience at a community level. I had an opportunity to participate in a community level intervention project in Nepal post 2015 earthquake, which led to a widespread destruction of homes and displacement of whole sections of society. And I have summarized the learnings from that experience here. Assessment. In the aftermath of a larger disaster, the initial task will be to make an assessment of the impact of the disaster on the community. In what areas intervention will help to build resilience in the community? In Nepal, the assessment team included an international team from multiple aid agencies as well as local participants representing the religious establishment there. Assessment included visiting the affected communities with a pre-prepared questionnaire developed after an initial workshop by experienced participants from these agencies. The questionnaire helped to ascertain how different villages were affected and where the need was most acute. Training. Once the assessment was done and the area of need identified, the next step was to recruit a set of social volunteers and local people willing to work with us in delivering with the intervention. Oftentimes, coping with the disaster means training people to rebuild their lives using innovative means or forming self-help groups to support each other. This requires a set of expertise garnered from previous experiences in similar settings, translating it into local language, training a pilot group to test the feasibility and success of the trainers, then scaling it up by training larger groups to pan out and work in multiple villages simultaneously. Working with other agencies is another important fact. In the aftermath of a disaster, there will be always multiple agencies involved in relief work, and their agenda are often very different. Rather than replicating their effort, a common platform for sharing information and working in tandem has the best results. For this, multi-agency workshop to set up and coordination work right at the onset. Identifying effort that might be seen as duplication can be avoided if the most competent agencies takes leadership in that area and shares the information. Credit also needs to be shared across agencies. For the recipients, a coordinated effort is seen as more productive, helpful, and less frustrating. Monitoring. Resilience building in community is like a wildfire. As more and more recipients benefit from it, more are willing to participate and with less suspicion. Information sharing becomes easy and success rate improves. On the contrary, if intervention is perceived as cumbersome or the short-term benefits too marginal, then they get rejected and the impact dwindles rapidly. Monitoring the intervention is therefore critical. For each activity, the frequency of monitoring has to be decided upfront and the stakeholders identified and informed. Reporting. These are two important types of reporting which are critical to success of any resilience building effort. Ongoing reporting. Ongoing reporting refers to the high frequency micro level reports that give feedback to stakeholders through monitoring of the intervention. It helps to evaluate changing needs, make course corrections, or redeploy critical resources. These are the types of reports that are integral to any project management effort. Summary reporting. Just like stories about disasters and the hardships surrounding it make headlines, stories of resilience and recovery become the symbol of hope for human survival. It also motivates those working in the area of disaster relief and encourages them to participate wholeheartedly. Summary reports become the stories that capture the learning experiences from an intervention and generate stories regarding how entire communities build resilience in the face of insurmountable adversities. Thank you. Hello, sir. I have done with my.
Thank you, Father, for this informative and loving talk. I remember some lines. It is well with the man who is gracious and service. You have talked about different other issues also. Okay, so I hope the learned participants, they are enlightened with your talk. Now we will have question answers and any query session later. may I request the next speaker to come to the dais and deliberate his opinion. Mr. Saha, Professor Saha, if I'm not wrong, the third speaker will be Professor Ashok Kumar Saha. He is from Jagannath University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Hello. Professor Saha.
Hello. Am I audible?
Welcome,
Hello.
Professor Saha, to this gathering.
So
And
very good morning. Very good morning, Mr. Chairperson, Professor R.P. Singh, Lucknow University, Lucknow. And let me first extend my thanks to the Department of Psychology and Department of English, St. John's College, Agra, for organizing an international webinar on human resilience in the time of crisis. First of all, I would like to say that the title is very important during the COVID-19 pandemic situation. Now, the question is how to build your resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a very important issues nowadays we are discussing about from all over the world. So many of the things already been discussed. I was listening, Ms. Hannah has identified what the resilience is and what is the practical and some theoretical aspect of the resilience. But I'm a psychologist, as you know, had been discussed, and I want to say something on about the theoretical aspect and the aspect and psychological aspect to build resilience. And first of all, you see, there are some key steps of building resilience in our human life. And first of all, if you see, there are some steps. The first step is the time management technique. If you know how to manage your time, how we can manage our time in our day-to-day activities, because we have a lot of things to do every day, every time. And if we can do our particular tasks in particular time, giving time for the time, so it will be easier for us to finish all the tasks in time, and that will give and boost our resilience in our life. And also, we should know the coping skills in everyday life. Everyday life, we need to cope with the many situations. So this type of situation, pandemic, is very, very rare indeed, because it is not one's life, maybe we are experiencing one time or maybe two times. And really, it is very hard time we are passing at the home quarantine. So if you know how to cope with this situation, it will help you to be resilient for the future. So it is it's a learned behavior. So one should know how to cope with different emergencies and different situations in our life. And one thing is physical exercise. Once we are in quarantine, but we should do some kind of exercise at home, and we do some things which involves some exercise, because at least if you would do regular exercise, that will give you some kind of relaxation and some kind of fitness in your body, and that fitness, your physical fitness also ensure your physical well-being as well as your mental well-being. Suppose if you are interested to build up your muscle, if you want to interested to build up your muscle, so you have to have go for regular exercise, you have to have go for regular dieting, you have to have good knowledge about the food habits and knowledge about food nutrition, what type of food is important for you, what type of food is not good for you this time. So one should be very aware about your food taking. And if you have no good knowledge about your food, I mean the food which contains vitamins, the food which contains carbohydrate, the food which contains protein, then you will not maintain your health at all. Because once you are staying at the home during the quarantine time, you have to have very much concern about your physique. So physiological exercise and your food habits are very important. If you take more sugar, it will destroy your body. If you take less oily food, then it will also bad for you. If you will take more carbohydrates, it will also have a lot of negative impacts on your physiological activities. So these ones you have to very understood. Other thing is relaxation. Relaxation, you may know that relaxation is a technique which is practiced throughout the Indian subcontinent and many other countries also, and like deep breathing, and also you can do it in your own way. Relaxation will give you some kind of peace of your mind, and also it will ensure some kind of happiness in your mind. So it can be a boost your resilience as well. Another thing is increase your social support network. Social support network and increase your connections with the other people in the living in the society. Increase connection with your families, family members. Increase connection with your brothers, cousins, relatives, and friends, and or your social members and the groups you are involved with in a group in the society. So you should extend the social support network because of your empathetic reasons and for compassionate reasons, because this will help you to feel less alone in time of need. Different age groups may try different type of approaches in social support network. If we can extend our social support network, then we can ask our children to extend their social support network so that they will feel happy and better than any other time during the quarantine. And so that will help us, and that will also increase our resilience at a great extent. And other thing is self-controlled behavior. Self-controlled behavior is a totally psychological and individual practice. Individual practice, if you can do that, then it will also help you to be resilient. Because social control behavior means the behavior which you can control yourself. That means the self-controlled behavior. You know there are different people have different choice, different interests, different attitudes. So people they can choose their profession, they can choose their work based on their interest. So if I know how to swim, then I should swim. If I know how to singing, then I should singing. If I know how to fishing, so that maybe different type of personal things through which we can engage with. And these personal things also give us a lot of resilience and motivate us for good reasons. Maintaining our health, that means our physiological health, and maintaining our psychological health is also very important. So physical wellness also ensure our mental health. So maintaining health is very important, and to maintain your good health, you should know about some food. Some food also have some impact on our physical health as well as our mental health and our physical wellness. It's like sleep. Sleep is some kind of phenomenon that we may need a different amount of sleep for different age group people. So we should make our plan, we should make our routine during the quarantine so that we can sleep properly. If I can sleep properly, that will ensure our good physical well-being, and also that will ensure our mental well-being. And healthy eating habits is also helpful for maintaining good health. As I told you that if you take a lot of salts during this time, if you take a lot of carbohydrates these times, it will ruin your health and it will have negative impact on your mental health as well. So we should take the food which is helpful, like vitamins are very important, proteins are right now very important for us. And also we have to very much aware about the hydration, because once you are dehydrated, so your resilience goes down. So you have to be take enough water time to time, because hydration will keep your body fit, and it will also ensure your physiologically fit and it will keep also mentally fit. Other thing I should mention here, that neutralization, practicing neutralization, practicing yoga, practicing meditation, and visualizing different things in practice like yoga and also like quantum method. There are a lot of ways we practice in our society and in our Indian subcontinent, and as well as in the Western countries are doing this meditation and neutralization to keep them fit. Other thing is we have to remain active, and we have to remain active all the time, because if I can engage something active, so that unnecessary thinking will not take place in our mind, so we'll be very happy indeed. And recreational activities, we have to engage ourselves in recreational activities. We have to supervise our children. We have to supervise our kids so that they are engaged their recreational activities. We have to make them engage in recreational activities, because if we can involve yourself in recreational activities, that will also ensure our good physiological activities and our mental fitness and our just like during this COVID-19 pandemic situation, where in home quarantine, you can put good clothes, you can observe any celebration at home, and you can make fun, you can make jokes within yourself, so that there is an ample scope with the family members to make our fitness. To make our fitness, we should make fun, we should make a joke, we should celebrate many small things in the family. We should put new clothes in the family during the pandemic situation. So there are maybe different reasons we can practice. And so moreover, as I told you, we have to remain active all the time. And if we can active ourselves in the family and with the family members, we can also make phone calls, we can make chat, we can involve with the Facebook, we can involve with the Zooms meeting. So we can also we can prepare a group for that also. In our relatives, we can make group, we can friends, we can make group, we can spend our good time. So I think these are the psychological way we can also make our life more stable, and we can boost our resilience, human resilience, and this way we can establish human resilience in the time of crisis. Thank you very much for giving you the opportunity to say something in this plenary session. Thank you. Thank you, the chairperson, Professor Artis.
Thank you, Professor Saha, for probing into the context and patterns of resilience. I'm sure it has produced greater food for thought for the audience. We shall probe into it. We shall have our queries and concerns later comment. So in this series, may I request another esteemed participant, speaker. She is Dr. Karuna Nagrani, clinical psychologist from London. Over to you, Ms. Karuna Nagrani.
Sure, thank you, sir.
Welcome, ma'am, to this program, and I'm sure we'll enrich our thoughts, opinion, and views on the issue concerned. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll try my best. Yeah. Hello and good afternoon. I am Karuna Nagrani. I'm a clinical psychologist. I completed my master's from Hislop College, Nagpur. Currently, I'm working with Ravenscroft Healthcare Limited with the pain management department alongside the physiotherapist and the consultants. I'm also a student mentor with Biju International School and Sports College. I specialize in special needs. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizing committee of St. John's College, Agra, for giving me this opportunity to share my views. And thank you so much, all who are joining us for today's talk. I just want to start with a moment of gratitude for all of you who are doing your part to help cope with the spread of COVID-19. Today, I'll be briefly talking about stress, resilience, and building resilience during this critical time. According to psychologists, there have been a couple of ingredients we experience stress. For example, novelty, something which is new to us or we haven't experienced or seen before. Another one is threat, something that can be harmful or a negative to you in some way. Unpredictability is something that you can't exactly predict when this is going to happen or how will this happen. And lack of control, knowing when you have very little or no control over something. And each of these ingredients are enough for us to make us feel stressed. But with the current coronavirus outbreak, we are experiencing all these symptoms all together and happening all at once, like a perfect recipe for stress. For example, the virus is new. We don't know how it spreads, and there is a possibility that our loved ones might get sick with it or already are. The quarantine and lockdown means not to leave the home, not to see the people, not to see our loved ones, and not to do things which we are used to doing it. With schools and colleges closing, these are critical structures that families and students have been scrambling. We are feeling the strain on our jobs, on our grades, savings, shortage of supplies. Meanwhile, reading the news, things happening in the country and in the world with not very much control over it. So with all this going on, it is no wonder that many of us are feeling quite stressed. And if you're feeling this way, let me tell you, you're not alone in this. However, one population, the current generation of our students, is facing this pandemic at a particularly critical stage of development. The unique emotional COVID-19 of college and university students. Lots of their structure, their independence and control for the majority of the students going to college or university has a rite of passage and transformation of the journey. Most are living away from home. For the first time are gaining their independence and developing new social support systems. Plans for graduations, summer internships, or major athletic events or academic milestones have dissolved for reasons out of students' control. These big moments are important rungs on the ladder of personal development. Missing it is almost like they are forced to increase a little bit, or at least no progress as expected on the developmental milestone. So how would you advise them to overcome this situation or any stressful situation? We all can try our best to build our resilience. But what is resilience? When you pull a rubber band out as far as you can stretch it, it bounces back quickly to its shape, which is what resilience is. Bouncing back into your best self and not being permanently bent out of shape. It's why resilience is so important, not just in the midst of a crisis that is pulling us all out of shape, but over the course of our lives. As our plans derail, people disappoint, and problems press in. Many people mistakenly assume that resilience is something that you are born with, or not, a character trait that you already possess. Not true. In fact, resilience is not about what you have, it's about what you do. The rug gets pulled out from all of us, knocking us down and pulling us out of shape. We wouldn't be human if we didn't feel sad in the aftermath of loss, afraid in the presence of threats to our sense of security, disappointed when our plans fall apart, hurt when trust is betrayed, or anxious in the face of uncertainty. Our ability to thrive over the course of our lives is not less contingent on everything going just as we want. Rather, it's how we respond when they don't. The good news is that resilience is a skill that sits on a continent. As such, it can be learned and built and bolstered with practice. We all have our share. I have had mine. The most foundational principle of resilience is never circumstances define you. Now, millions of you are finding themselves feeling some version of bent out of shape by the circumstances created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Collectively, our assumptive worlds, a term used by us psychologists to describe our mental maps of how we assume the world works and what can or possibly can't happen to us, have been rocked pretty hard. I have heard people saying, I just can't believe. It's all too surreal. I am just waiting to wake up and discover that it's a bad dream. Except that it's not a bad dream. It is a reality. Not just going through many disappointments or derailed plans. We have had our shares. I have had mine. Drawing on my own one wisdom, here are some insights. We have had insights to build more resilience in our own life so that no matter what happens, you will not be defined by it. You'll be able to draw your own experience. However painful, to bounce back stronger, wiser, and with capacity to forge a deeply meaningful life. Learn to embrace your struggles. Robert Frost, like one of the poets, very rightly said in one of his poetries that the only way out is through. In terms of building resilience, this means not trying to avoid the painful situations or emotions that naturally rise in the face of adversity, but allowing them to feel all the way through. Whatever is outside of your control is teaching you to let go. It may not be comfortable, it may not be fun, but it is the truth. Likewise, if you're feeling anxious or afraid or sad or overwhelmed or angry right now, or a swirling mix of all of the above, give yourself space to feel your feelings. Embrace the struggle and transform yourself. The only way out is through. Prioritize what strengthens you. No one is able to bring your best and bravest self to life all day or every day. Life doesn't work that way. And the harder the storm winds are blowing around us, the more vital it is to pause from our doing and recharge and reset who we are being. Few years ago, when I landed to UK, I had a tough time starting and settling with my career, getting adapted to the new work style. It's been a stressful time for me and my family. So in the midst of all this, I have been doubling down all my advice that I regularly give to others to prioritize what makes you feel stronger, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. During my days in quarantine, I am being more disciplined than usual, exercising more than I did before, reading, practicing breathing techniques, guided meditations, writing down what I am grateful for, listening to music, dancing to it sometimes with my little one, having green smoothie each morning, which to be honest, I don't enjoy really, and regular video chats with my friends and family. So writing down the activities that help you feel stronger, calmer, and more grounded in your innate capacity to thrive under pressure and commit doing them more. Practice self-compassion. Show some mercy on yourself. No one is their best self all the time. Not opera or not Amitabh. We all are innately fallible and flawed. We all have moments where we fail to live up to the high bar we set for ourselves. Being generous, patient, calm, and brave. So if you find yourself feeling anxious or overwhelmed, impatient, or judgmental, cut yourself a little slack and give yourself permission to feel your vulnerability, and be the wholly imperfect person you are. My personal practice is writing it in my diary. My most recent entry read as, yes, you are dealing with a lot, but out in the end. So be kind to yourself and just trust that you have everything it takes to meet each moment as it unfolds. Walk with faith over you have got this. By being kinder to ourselves in harder moments, it helps us become more resilient and spares us the suffering of beating ourselves up. Reach out for support. Countless studies have found that people with strong connections weather life storms better and emerge from them better off. They also have stronger immune systems, higher recovery rates from illnesses. Yet, in the midst of our toughest times, we sometimes withdraw from the very people who would like to support us through these times. So don't let fear of appearing weak or needy keep you away from reaching out for support. We forge our deeper bonds through our struggles than our success and can remain far more resilient when we are not going it all alone. This in turn enables us to be a source of greater support for others. So if you are unsure whether to reach out for help and share the truth of your life, consider that not doing so isn't brave, it's selfish. Seek out for good. In this time of pandemic, there may be 2,000 things I cannot do more, but there are 5,000 things which I can. I am sure even you can. I want to focus on reframing this situation to focus on what we could do or has served me well, and many more. It also inspired me countless times not to get stuck in a mental wheelchair of my own making. Focusing on what I cannot do or wish we were different. As news headlines bombard us with like different reasons to make us feel sad or scared, there's many reasons to justify feeling like a powerless victim of circumstances, far beyond our control. Do not squander the hour of your pain. We must be so intentional to look for the good in the midst of the bad and bring our best selves to these worst of times. Every adversity holds seeds of good, but we have to do our part to look for them, to water them, then blossom in our lives. Experience of post-traumatic growth, whereby people who have experienced a significant trauma emerge from it as happier and more wholehearted people, aligns with this principle. Post-traumatic growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. It occurs when people are committed to finding meaning and their suffering, to using it in its way that held them more purposefully, more compassionately, and more fully. The good news is, the only thing standing between you and your experience of growth is you. Which brings us full circle back to resilience. Not something you have, but something. So if you do nothing else today, take a moment to decide who it is you choose to be in this moment of your life. Deciding to show up for yourself and for others as the person you most aspire to be will help you discover within yourself whole new realms of resilience and resourcefulness, courage and creativity that you might never otherwise have known. Thank you, take care and stay safe.
Thank you, madam, for your talk. I was recalling Ode to Psyche by John Keats, poet from English literature, who breeding flowers will never breed the same, and there shall be thee for soft's delight, that shadowy thought can win, a bright torch and a casement oft at night. So literature and psychology has a deep connection. We'll discuss, we'll have our comments. Um, as the next speaker in this program, I would like to invite Professor Sanjay Mukherjee sir from Saurashtra University. Over to you, Professor Mukherjee. Professor Mukherjee, hello.
Thank you. Esteemed Chairperson, sir. Am I audible?
I welcome Professor Mukherjee to this program. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Fellow panelists, esteemed Chairperson, fellow panelists, and all participants of this webinar. It's indeed a privilege and an honor to speak, although virtually, in this webinar organized by this historic St. John's College. It is indeed a privilege because my mentor and my guide, Professor Avdesh Kumar Singh, a great teacher, also came from this particular college. As I speak today, there is a touch of sadness because we lost him a few months ago. I hasten to add, we lost him only physically. For scores and scores of students, he lives on. So I thank Team St. John's for this opportunity and congratulate Principal Professor Shailendra Singh and his very able colleagues for this wonderful initiative. Much has been said about resilience since the morning, and it was such a comprehensive keynote that Professor Mishra delivered. I would like to focus a little on crisis. Now, as I see it, it is the nature of crisis to break a continuity. And it is human resilience that can resume, revive, or recalibrate the good things again. My other fellow speakers have also given a few examples from their personal life. Now, I also see this continuity as at a personal level when I say that I'm privileged to be speaking on this occasion. My mentor, Professor Avdesh Kumar Singh, moved out from the same institution, St. John's, to become a great teacher, shaped many like me to become a teacher, and today I return to the alma mater of my mentor, although for the time being virtually, which is the new normal. But this event in itself is a testimony of resilience. Had things been otherwise, this would have been a seminar and not a webinar. But crisis interrupted, and individuals and institutions geared up, and we have rebounded, helped by technology, and we have begun all over the world. Individuals, institutions, and individuals have rebounded to continue the good work. So as I see that there is a streak of defiance in resilience and plenty of hope, even when things seem quite hopeless. So much has been said about resilience from Professor Simon in the morning onwards, talking about adapting, adapting, discovering our own strengths in the face of crisis. And students of literature would well remember numerous examples of resilience at a personal level. For example, the negative capability of John Keats. Our chairperson was remembering John Keats, for example. The negative capability of John Keats or that of Vincent van Gogh immediately comes to mind. Negative capability being the capacity of the artist to pursue a vision of beauty, even in the face of uncertainty, doubt, or confusion. This phrase also later on came to be used for John Keats himself, who kept on coming out with one wonderful ode after another, knowing very well that his own life will be cut short soon. by tuberculosis. At the subgeneric level of literature, resilience is well exemplified by literature of the Holocaust, slave narratives, or nearer home, literature about the partition of India. And let us not forget that the historic and cultural event of great efflorescence called the Renaissance has been questioned by women scholars as not being a Renaissance for women at all. In certain cases, it has taken nearly 5 centuries for a woman's voice to emerge. Reminds you of a seed patiently waiting deep within the ground, biding its time with hope to spring back to life again in a favorable time. Voices of Renaissance women are metaphoric of that seed that came to life only in as recently as the 1980s. Allow me to quote just a few lines. This is from an Italian poet called Vittoria Colonna. And I quote, "Others called for war, I always for peace, saying it is enough for me if my marquis remains quietly at home with me. Your uncertain enterprises do not hurt you, but we who wait, mournfully grieving, are wounded by doubt and by fear. You men, driven by rage, considering nothing but your honor, commonly go off shouting with great fury to confront danger. We remain with fear in our heart and grief on our brow for you. Sister longs for brother, wife for husband, mother for son." And the women had to strategize their own ways of resilience. Father, recently, our speaker, Father Biju, was giving so many individual and community level examples of resilience. So not pointing out to just individual works of literature, I would like to remember how literature itself is a metaphor for a record of resilience. So many people here, right from Professor Mishra to people who are in the field of psychology, have been quoting literature. So I see literature itself metaphoric for a record of resilience. Among the many well-known metaphors we associate with literature, the mirror immediately comes to mind. This metaphor given by none other than Shakespeare, where Hamlet instructs the players of the play within the play Mousetrap, that, I quote what Hamlet says, "The purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is, to hold, as it were, a mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of time, his form and pressure." I unquote. That is, literature is supposed to hold up a mirror and show good as good, evil as evil, and the passage of time, though time be very powerful and often ascribed in literature with an uppercase, as simply and unnervingly the passage of time, as rendered powerfully in the play Waiting for Godot. The philosopher Nietzsche would allude to the same metaphor in his The Birth of Tragedy. But on this occasion, I would contend that the resilience of literature lies in the fact that the mirror it holds up to the society is not a plain mirror, but a concave or a convex one. That is, literature records not only how a society is, but how it ought to be. And then there are other metaphors we attribute for literature, like the lamp that illumines and makes us aware about our gray and black areas, or the crystal ball, or the telescopic lens by which we acknowledge the uncanny ability of literature to anticipate the future, thereby sending a signal of warning to us. Equally significant, I feel, are institutions like this educational institution that facilitate in recording resilience for future generations to come. Teachers in such institutions analyze and validate great works of literature and help create a canon and a tradition. I am reminded of the birth of English studies and, in a way, that of English departments as we know them today, out of the crisis of the Great War, later known as World War I, and the contribution of the first great teachers of English like I.A. Richards, William Empson, and F.R. Lewis. And inspired by them, the great group of American new critics who, in a way, set the ball rolling for our discipline of English studies. And in a way, modern works 100 years from now, in the 1920s. A disturbance.
Please mute yourself. Everyone other than the speaker, I would request you to mute yourself.
एक तो ठंडी नहीं है.
I'll just.
Hello. Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I was talking to you all about institutions that play a very significant role, as I see. And teachers in such institutions, they analyze great works of literature. And I'm reminded of English studies and, in a way, that of the English departments, which began facing against the crisis of the Great War or the World War I. Out of that, we had our first great English teachers whom we know, I.A. Richards, William Empson, F.R. Lewis, and inspired by this trio, the group of American new critics who, in a way, set the ball rolling for our discipline as we have it today. And in some sense, the modern period and its literature has been so very important for our discipline. I'm particularly reminded, since we have friends from the psychology department also, how a significant modern work like Mrs. Dalloway contributed to our understanding of the psychological trauma, which was then analyzed as shell shock. It was a new thing. People did not understand it then. It was seen clinically, even legally, but not psychologically and humanely. And it is this novel, Mrs. Dalloway, in 1925, that is talking to you about this new trauma that hundreds of people have been afflicted with, the necessity to understand this trauma at the psychological level and the individual human level. Similarly, it is this great teacher, I.A. Richards, who reminds us that with the coming of the 20th century, there seems to be a change, a shift in the rhythm of life. The rhythm that was set, for example, by the horse's hooves have given way to the rhythm of the combustion engine and the automobiles. And these shifts, they marked changes and they were recorded by great works of literature. Although against the present crisis, I would like to share what we all know, people in the humanities. Even before this crisis, it seems that our entire discipline of humanities itself has been facing a crisis for quite some time. Crisis of apathy and severe lack of funds. It has to strategize resilience to keep itself relevant. And from many quarters, resilience is actually happening. So finally, I wish to congratulate St. John's on their wonderful initiative and thank them and you all for offering me this opportunity of communication as we stand at the juncture of redefining the concepts of the real and the virtual, not to mention the surrealism of this pandemic suddenly dropping on us out of the blue. But I'm quite confident that literature and literary studies, teaching of literature will respond to this new normal situation very soon. In fact, it already has, as I think. I wish to remind you all, in the end, the words of Jericho Brown, the latest Pulitzer Prize-winning Black American poet, who says, "Poetry is about resilience. It holds out hope because it changes our minds. That can lead to a change of action." So here we stand at the juncture of strategizing, brainstorming, thinking what would be not only a change in shift in thoughts, but how to translate that into change in action. Thank you very much, all of you, for giving time, listening to me, and I wish this webinar all the very best. Thank you.
Human resilience is to receive, to revive, and to recalibrate human life. It was so aphoristic, so categorical, and so new. Thank you, Professor Mukherjee, for this comprehensive talk. We have learned a lot from the creative, from cultural, from theoretical perspective, and we'll really implement these things. What you have said, that creativity is poetry is a great force, a thing like that. Creativity is safety valve for resilience. We'll carry forward this idea. And in the process of deliberation, we invite our next speaker, Dr. Shayanti Talwar. Over to you, Dr. Shayanti Talwar.
Thank you so much, Professor Singh. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, and we welcome you to this program. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. I have been listening to very distinguished speakers all morning, and I am honored to have been given this opportunity to speak in the plenary session. So thank you so much, Principal S.P. Singh, sir, and my distinguished panelists and my academician friends who are attending this webinar, and also the chairperson of this session, Professor R.P. Singh. Resilience has been one mainstay of our culture. We have grown up literally and visually feeding on resilience. What are our heroes after all? Whether it's our epics or our films, the hero is someone who can rise in the face of a crisis, show great resilience, and come out of it. If not unscathed, then at least in one piece. And though we have been consumers of the discourse on resilience, how many times have we really had the opportunity or even the need to be resilient? I am not denying the fact or the possibility that on an individual level, we may have had our share of disappointments, our heartbreaks, our emotional fallouts, and our financial setbacks. But let us reflect on whether we can really give them the status of a monumental crisis, a catastrophe of mythic proportions, a crisis that has the ability to send us back in time, a crisis that brings economies to a standstill, leads nations to bow down, results in mass paranoia, leads to, in many cases, a collapse of our infrastructure and our healthcare system, perplexes our leaders, and sends us scurrying into our neat little holes, making us realize yet again that we are but nondescript and minuscule beings, wanton flies for the sport of God. A crisis that shoves us rudely and without any warning in the face of the absurd and the uncertainty governing us, even as we are just beginning to get our heads around it. and a crisis that compels us to acknowledge our finitude. And what's more important, teach us to make peace with our vulnerability by not just showing resilience, but by actually being resilient. In that case, do we have role models to turn to? Where do we get our strength from? How do we survive this crisis? And even if we do, how do we survive the deep psychological wounds it inflicts in its wake? The scars it leaves behind. The biggest question these days doing the rounds is, will it be a different world post COVID-19? Will literature change post COVID-19? Will it be a different human race post COVID-19? I ask you, you tell me, was it a different world post Holocaust? Was it a different world after the atom bomb? Closer home, was it a different world post partition? Catastrophic events that blew up nations, destroyed families and communities, caused mass migrations, left wounds and trauma of unimaginable proportions, and yet we did survive. The world and its people did manage to survive because they were in it together. They held hands and they empathized and they cried for their fellow humans who didn't make it. And they laughed and shared whenever and whatever little they could. And above all, they wrote songs, poems, stories, diaries, madly, tenaciously, urgently, in a frenzy, as if the world were going to end. And of course it did for them. And what they left behind was their writing, words that showed others what it all meant, or maybe the meaninglessness, the futility of it all. What does Albert Camus teach us if not resilience? His book, The Plague, is the archetype of the monumental crisis that haunts us today. A mysterious disease that creeps out of nowhere and takes you by surprise. It's just a different time and a different name and a different place. But in his narrative, people act and react and cope just the way they are doing today. And then there are people who are in denial and go about unaffected as if it's business as usual. And there are still others that scorn the facts because they think that they are too progressive, too modern a nation, to be afflicted by something like plague. Because isn't it true that it was eradicated, at least in Europe, till it hits them in the gut? And a plague becomes the plague. Was Camus a visionary? Well, perhaps yes, as all great writers are. No frills, no garnishings, just plain, simple truth, which often hurts because it is so indifferent, so audacious, so in your face. The plague is a metaphor for all those invisible, unnameable forces that can suddenly gain momentum and render us vulnerable. The only way to deal with it is to accept it and live with it and be resilient. Why is it that even before COVID-19 struck us, Manto in recent years became a sudden rage? Why were his works being adapted into films and plays so frequently and so often? What was he writing about? Blatant truths of society that people did not dare to talk about or venture close to. For him, no part of human existence was taboo or unworthy of representation. He wrote of prostitutes and pimps alike. By writing about the dregs in society, what did he intend to achieve? He was humanizing them, according them a subject status, and turning them into heroes, unlikely, unconventional heroes. Nonetheless, living, breathing examples of resilience. Today, it might do us good that in the wake of the monumental crisis which looms over us and yet is invisible to the naked eye, while we grope in the dark or keep our heads above the rising waters, desperately clutching at straws, it is better that instead of holding on to straws, we locate these voices. We dig deep and find and hold on to these nuggets of great wisdom and deep soul searching that people the pages of these narratives from across the globe. writing that brings us actual or fictive testimonies of people inspired by facts who had no choice but to be resilient. We look for those who had the chance to be resilient, to witness resilience firsthand, to imagine what resilience might have been like, might be like, and have to be resilient every day, COVID or no COVID, or who have documented acts of resilience, perhaps anticipating something like this to occur and keep recurring. Because isn't that the law of the universe? Chaos underlying predictable patterns and a pattern in chaos. Resilience is not being, resilience is becoming. Today, we think of ourselves as heroes rising to this unprecedented situation. And we might imagine that this is it. It doesn't get any bigger. And yet, big and small are so relative. They are just ways of seeing, aren't they? For if this is big, then what is it to die of starvation because one is out of work and has exhausted their savings and utterly removed from any kind of entitlement? To die of dehydration on the road, thousands of miles away from home, on a lone and long walk under the scorching sun? To be run over by a train as one falls asleep, utterly exhausted on the tracks? To succumb to a smaller, insignificant, trivial cause of death, in a bid to escape a bigger, more hyped, globally recognized cause of death? Aren't these the stories we are getting to hear every day that prompt reactions ranging from cynicism to despair to horror? Yet, are these stories true only because we are assailed by an invisible enemy, a dreaded virus? Or has it always been like this for some people, for many in fact, putting their bodies on the line, either while constructing a road or while walking on a constructed road, while laying the tracks or lying on the tracks? Could it be that these invisible people and their stories are ironically gaining visibility because somewhere their vulnerability and the uncertainty hovering over their existence resonates with ours? And in their predicament, we start locating our personal myths. Perhaps for some people, it is the truth of their life, the cornerstone of their existence. A life that is only about resilience. Paradoxically, the virus does not discriminate. No one is insulated. It doesn't care for entitlement or privilege. It does not differentiate on religious or ethnic or class grounds. As Judith Butler says, the scariest and the most harrowing thing about COVID-19 is not knowing whether I can give it to someone or I can get it from someone, which takes us right back to the absurd. And that is perhaps the reason we feel so threatened, and the reason we want to reach out to each other, connect virtually all the time, and in the process, accept and acknowledge our vulnerability, want to be human, and want to understand all about resilience, because honestly, we do not have a choice. Our only option is resilience. An author comes to mind, Arundhati Roy, and her second novel, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. If anything, it is a narrative of resilience. It is numerous stories woven into one polyphonic saga of resilience. Through its textured and non-chronological narrative, it brings the invisibilized and the unheard in the realm of the visible and enables an amplified voice and heightened subjectivity to these, as Butler would describe them, precarious beings, physically, socially, culturally, politically, and many a times economically situated on the fringes and peripheries of the mainstream. The novel teems with people like the crowded streets of India, people who are not props to further a plot, but people with a story, with lives precariously poised, that seldom make it to the front page of a newspaper or any of the primetime news shows on national television. Roy's novel brings to us all those people for whom resilience is not about becoming, it is a way of being, because that is the only way to be. It is as much about the trans community, its predicament, the social ostracism, and the identity crisis it faces, as it is about the need for self-determination of an embittered and militant turned people of Kashmir. It is as much about the armed resistance of the indigenous tribals of India who have been forced to become squatters and trespassers on their own land, as it is about the various factions and communities from across India demanding justice and wanting to be heard who converge at Jantar Mantar, New Delhi, where they are allowed to agitate because they are in a democracy. It is about Dalits, Muslims, traumatized individuals, men wanting to be women and mothers, women wanting to be neither, mothers looking for disappeared sons, abandoned babies wanting to be mothered, and people with petitions that eventually will amount to nothing. And they are all connected by one common thread, their resilience. The people that Roy includes in her narrative space are mostly the people that the construct of a hegemonic nation state will often exclude. The pages of the novel come to life because of these precarious beings. People who are not legal citizens, people disenfranchised, politically invisibilized, historically oppressed, socially stigmatized, economically deprived. In other words, people who are expendable and therefore not particularly grievable. Human projects in precarity. Roy's work is about such people who live on the edge and are constantly falling through the cracks and fissures between worlds. But while they are at it, they celebrate life, cherish ties, and forge friendships in the true spirit of resilience. They refuse to be worms. They find their little joys and enjoy the clear blue sky and the cool breeze and sweat under the sun and have their daily aches and their aha moments in all the spirit of resilience. I'm sure there are more out there, more such stories, more such narratives, more such inspiring works and feeling writers who have always known their writing will be needed. Indisputably and unanimously, more such documentations and imaginary tales of breathtakingly beautiful and rapturous moments eked out of the ordinariness of everyday existence, which is a brave defiance to crisis and an acceptance of the absurd, which is everywhere and all-pervading. It is time to celebrate these narratives and look at the redeeming and salvaging aspects of the philosophy they essay, because that is how we can redeem ourselves and emanate a redemptive spirit, and at the same time be humble and grateful for this existence and carry on with a sense of duty and conviction, embodying and passing on the message of resilience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Talwar, for blending the existence with prospect and giving us many words of hope. I'm sure that the audience would have certainly gleaned many positive trajectories from your thought. And now with this paper, this session is the 6 London presenters, they have given us, now this is open for discussion and comments. May I request the audience to switch, to mute their, kindly mute yourself.
Professor Singh, you may unmute yourself. Yes, Professor. Or probably a better way could be if we could write our questions and you could take some of them and respond. Ask the panelists to respond, or
hello. may I request Dr. Isaac to, hello, Dr. Isaac.
Yes, sir.
Now it is over to you. What is the policy? Are we going to have the interactive session over here, or they will send the message to the learned speakers? I think the queries may be sent to the learned speakers. They will answer the queries at a later phase, a later stage.
Sir, actually, probably we'll have to evolve something like that. Sorry for interrupting, because we have run out of time now, and it is about to be the time for the parallel sessions. So maybe one question we could take at the most for 5, because we need to wind up the session. So if you could give your
Okay, so on behalf of the organizing committee, I am thankful to the speakers for giving their learned views to us, and it was really a lively session. As far as I understand, the audience will give a better judgment at a later stage, and what I understand that the resilience is to be developed at our own. No book, no philosophy, nothing can tell you better than your own self. If I want to wind up the thing with a small
इसमें कुछ लोग कमेंट आ रहे हैं, वो कैसे आ रहे हैं?
Hello, this is night comes so furious this night, so bewildering, nasty and dark. We the eternal flares of the oversoul, we shall shine to the eternal glance. So now over to the principal, sir.
I would request Dr. Preeti Masi to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing committee. Preeti? Dr. Preeti, are you there?
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And before I start my vote of thanks for all the dignitaries and coming participants, let me start a vote of thanks to especially the plenary session speakers. The best and beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt by heart. Thank you is one such prayer among them. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who have shared their valuable thoughts with us in this plenary session. I, Preeti Masi, Joint Secretary of Organizing Committee, on behalf of Departments of English and Psychology and the entire fraternity of the St. John's College, Agra, first of all, extend my most sincere thanks to the Almighty God for making this plenary session a resounding success. With his blessings and grace, wheels have started rolling of the International E-Conference on Human Resilience in the times of crisis. I extend a really hearty vote of thanks to all our plenary speakers who spared time from their busiest schedule to grace the occasion. Some of them even ignored the time zone restraints and decided to be with us in the conference. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will surely be going to encourage us in the future events. Miss Hannah, your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. Your ideas and elegance of explanation of everything. I need to mention my deepest sense of appreciation. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank Professor Sanjay Mukherjee, who graced us with this thought-provoking address and set a perfect platform for our departments and college. I would like to thank you for all words of wisdom that radiated a source of enlightenment within us. You rightly confirmed that there is still vision of hope in this distressing situation of pandemic that the entire world is facing. Thanks a bunch, sir. A big thank you to Dr. Shayanti Talwar for that inspiring speech. Your special mention of first step of solving the problem is to accept one. I'm sure the audience will have a lot to take away from the speech. We are all inspired by your great words. I also liked Father Biju Joseph's speech, where you mentioned your great social work in disaster management. The way you explained the topic is exemplary. You have graced us with your presence and guidance. A million thanks to you, Father. I appreciate Ms. Karuna Nagrani's speeches, where you mentioned the concerns of students in this pandemic and the measures can be taken to overcome them effectively. The way in which you explained this subject was extraordinary. It was nothing short of incredibly informative and interesting. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your valuable words and these beautiful moments with all of us. Professor Ashok Kumar Saha, your speech brought new insights. We enjoyed the lecture you gave today. I want to compliment you on your speech on psychological challenges, mental health, and psychosocial intervention during COVID-19. It was very relevant to our current conference. Thanks, sir, for all your insightful words. Professor Harpreet Singh, I congratulate you and thank you for conducting the whole session very nicely. Once again, my gratitude to all the esteemed speakers of the plenary session for gracing the occasion and sharing their opinions today. I sincerely hope all the participants will enjoy the enlightenment in these 2 days of International Conference. Thank you for your participation. Thank you, everyone.
Hearty thanks to all to the panelists, the distinguished speakers and viewers who have stayed with us this morning and have led to a very enlightening and very meaningful day. So now we break for the lunch and we'll assemble in the respective parallel technical sessions. Thanks a lot.